I've reached December of 1985 in my chronology, and you might think that means I'm almost through with 1985. But here's the thing. Of all the Famicom games released before 1986, almost 20% of them were released in December 1985. Famicom releases were stacked in the last couple months of the year for the sake of New Year's sales, so we're always going to see that kind of crunch in December. Leading off the month is Karateka. It came to the Famicom from new publisher SoftPro International. Don't worry if you've never heard of them. They published exactly 2 Famicom games before backing out. Karateka was a massive hit on computers in the early 80s. It's the first game by Jordan Mechner. He rotoscoped his karate instructor into the characters, and that gave Karateka very distinctive animation. It looked and played unlike anything else available at that time. A quick aside here, Famidaily's purpose is cataloging all of the Famicom releases, so even though I could do an extremely deep dive into Karateka, it's really not what I'm here for. If you're interested in the game at all, Mechner has published his diaries that he kept while making the game. They're a great read, and I strongly recommend getting them. There's a link below this video to purchase them on Amazon, and it's not even an affiliate link. I highly recommend it and his Prince of Persia diary if you have any interest in early computer game development. The story of the game is that a princess has been kidnapped by the evil warlord Akuma, and you, as a young karate master, have climbed to his cliff-top fortress. You then fight your way through his guards to rescue her. The first challenge in Karateka is figuring out the controls. If you don't know the basics, then you're dead immediately, and that is something that tends to make people bounce off this game. There are 2 stances, a running stance where you can freely move, and a fighting stance where you're prepared to attack. The thing is, if you're hit while you're in the running stance, then it's an instant game over, and you start the game in the running stance. You press down to switch between running and fighting. While you're in the running stance, you press the B button to bow. And if you're far enough away from someone, they will respond in kind. So now you're in the fighting stance, and you have an opponent in front of you. There are 6 moves that you can do. The A button kicks, and the B button punches. And you can press up or down to modify where you're targeting. So there's a high attack, middle attack, and low attack. You can also slowly shuffle forward or back off while you're in the fighting stance. Be careful of backing off too far though, because you can back yourself right off the cliff. At the top of the screen, you can see your health and your opponent's health. Your health is the red square that moves to the left. Your opponent's health is the blue square that moves to the right. If you manage to knock an opponent out, you'll recover a bit of health. The fighting in Karateka could be better. It's very similar to Yar Kung Fu, where there's impact points rather than whole attacks. Where your foot or fist wind up is the most important thing in the attack. Naturally, kicks have a longer range, punches are shorter. In general, I found the high kick to be the most effective move because it has the most reach. But as you get further in the game, it becomes less effective. One of the subtler challenges in Karateka is that as soon as you knock someone down, you need to move forward. After a short period of time, another enemy will spawn at the entrance to the area that you're in. And you'll even get a little cutscene as they run towards you. But what this means is that the longer you take to run forward, the more enemies you have to fight. Since there isn't any regular healing, Karateka becomes a battle of attrition, and the fewer enemies you fight, the better. So as soon as that person hits the ground, press up to go back into the running stance, and get moving. Speaking of cutscenes, you'll sometimes get cutaways to Akuma sending his troops after you. He doesn't just have human warriors either. Akuma's hawk will come after you, and it tends to be one of the more dangerous enemies. It'll move in fast, and if you don't switch stances quickly, you'll get hit and knocked out. You'll have to knock it away to get rid of it. Maybe it's me, but I can see the Apple II influences on the Famicom game. There's a certain style of sprite and color palette choice and it reflects how there weren't a lot of modifications to the game when it was ported to the Famicom. Karateka is a pretty short game. Once you're decent at fighting, it only takes a few minutes to beat it. But that learning curve is pretty steep. Karateka winds up being Jordan Mechner's only appearance on the Famicom. Although a NES version of Prince of Persia does exist, it was never released in Japan. There were plenty of other console ports of Prince of Persia that Japanese players got, though. Karateka is definitely a classic. It's a game that pushed the medium forward quite a bit, but it is kind of hard to get into looking back after 35 years. I do recommend trying it, though. The Famicom port is dead on from the Apple version, and as a cartridge for a popular system, it's a lot more accessible. Once you get over that control hurdle, Karateka is an interesting little game.